One of this morning's must-read opinion pages comes from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette in a piece entitled "What Donald Trump Wants for Pennsylvania Republicans and Why It's Bad for the Party." Associate editorial page editor David Mills writes in part, quote, "Does Donald Trump care that his party takes the Senate? Was electability a big part of his thinking when he chose to endorse Doug Mastriano and Mehmet Oz? I have my doubts." Which helps him more in 2024, a Republican Party taking the Senate and keeping Democrats from passing their bills, or a Republican Party not taking the Senate and letting the Democrats do what they want? The worse the country does, the more people will vote to make America great again. Donald Trump, the political magician, performs his magic for a reason, and it's not the health and success of the Republican Party. It is Mr. Trump's own success. At some point, Republicans might see that, but they'll be too late smart. Well, and Joe, the bottom line here is Donald Trump has never cared about the Republican Party.
Right.
And many would argue he has never cared about America. And many of his actions along the way back up that premise. The only question is, when are Republicans going to see this doesn't end well for them? There have been many legitimate ways to back that up along the way, but they don't want to see it.
No, to their detriment.
Including election losses.
He won one election in 2016, as we've said, 10 days after Comey's letter. Trump admitted it was the only day that he could have won the election, on that sole day. Then Republicans, under his leadership, lost elections in 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. And Jonathan Lemire, the best really example of Donald Trump purposefully tanking Republicans' chances. I think you go back to 2020 in December and you see what he did to make sure that Mitch McConnell, who he hated, make sure that Mitch McConnell would not be the Senate Majority Leader again by actually suggesting to Republicans in the state of Georgia that their vote didn't count. And now he knows that Dave McCormick would have been a better candidate, a general election candidate, than Mehmet Oz. He knows that J.D. Vance, the Silicon Valley, San Francisco guy who wouldn't do as well as, say, Dolan or somebody else from the state of Ohio. He knows that Blake Masters is not going to win that election. And yet he keeps endorsing candidates he knows can't win. I think I think that op-ed's pretty brilliant. Donald Trump knows what he's doing, and he wants Republicans to keep losing. So he's the only game in town for conservatives.
He also knows that Herschel Walker has a turbulent background and lives in Texas. So these are all problematic candidates that Trump has blessed for this time around. And it does seem that he is, shall we say, not unhappy if he was able to keep Mitch McConnell out of power. And I think it's just worth reflecting, though, Joe, you brought it up, that pair of runoffs for the Senate seats in Georgia. That election happened on January 5th, mind you, 2021, with the results coming in the morning of January 6th, just hours before the riot began. That Trump, during that entire time, Mitch McConnell the reason why he didn't call for Trump to concede is that he hoped that Trump would stay in the game, that he would help him win those seats in Georgia so he could remain majority leader. Trump not only did not do that, he only made one trip to Georgia for a rally that he spent completely on his own grievances and false claims of election fraud, and indeed suggested to those in attendance and those watching on television, Republicans in Georgia, that, hey, this election is going to be rigged too, so don't bother. And those two defeats gave Democrats that Senate majority, which has enabled just about everything that President Biden has accomplished, and particularly that massive reconciliation bill passed a few weeks ago. Changed the course of history. Donald Trump's temper tantrum then, and his continuing one now, may also change the balance of power in the Senate.